just a side note of things that I continue to see come out. I'm gonna close my door. There's like shadows in my face. Is people saying Matt Carroll? I don't get that one.
What?
That's a
That's
thing.
awful. That's
People-
terrible.
I swear this is a thing.
Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust, the draft show. Max Chadwick alongside Nick Merriam and Donny Clemons. Massive episodes today. We just dropped a 2-round mock draft. Another huge episode today. Big board 3.0. It's been about 4 months since we last dropped our big board. A lot of changes. Donny wasn't even here for our last big board. It was big board 2.0. We did a top 100 players at the midpoint of the college football season. Well, now the college football season is over. The NFL season is over. It's officially draft season. We got a top 150 for you guys before the combine. So, as always, please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BoomerBustDraft. Check out our website for our full mock drafts. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Stay up to date on all our latest content. Rate us 5 stars. Comment below what you think about the big board, other videos you guys want us to see us do, and follow our personal accounts as well at Chad_Maxwick, at Nick with Sports, and at Pick and Spreads on TikTok as well. So, how we're going to do this, we have a top 150. I'm not going to read off all 150 names. So, unfortunately for our podcast listeners, you're just going to have to go to YouTube or go to our Twitter, Instagram, wherever, TikTok, at Boomer Bust Draft to see the 150 to 101, which you'll see flashing across your screen right now. Nick, let's start with you on this. What player in the 150 to 101 range do you want to talk about?
I feel like I always end up doing this, where I end up taking a player that's like really high in the lower parts of the big board, because I don't know, I just never have some random player from nowhere who I have to talk about. We're going to talk about James Cook, who's 101 on this board. He's literally the highest player I could have talked about in this range. Running back from Georgia, younger brother of Dalvin Cook, Minnesota Vikings running back. And he is quite literally Dalvin Cook light. And I think he's not getting enough talk in this draft class. What I think is going to be a very interesting middle round running back class. I think there's a lot of talent in these middle rounds. There's probably going to be at least 1 or 2 guys who come out of this third or fourth rounds that are going to be really good in the NFL at the running back position. And I think James Cook is one of those guys who could very easily be there. He has that speed that Cook brought into the NFL level. He's not the shiftiest running back in the world, but he's also a guy who can catch out of the backfield. And I think as this position has gone, you see a lot of teams taking guys in the third, fourth, fifth rounds and getting successful players. We saw this last year with guys like Khalil Herbert and Elijah Mitchell, Ramondre Stevenson. I think James Cook is the next vein of running back in that vein of running backs, succeeding in the next level. And I also kind of sort of am still kind of in this mindset that I think if you're related to someone who's good at football, it kind of runs in the family. And I do believe that James Cook will make it work next level because of that.
So I'm going to be talking about an Alabama corner in a player who's not in the top 100. And you might be thinking, an Alabama corner that's not in the top 100? You crazy? Well, that's because Josh Jobe is not very good, but he's also not the worst ever.
Donnie's just taking a player. He's just like, this guy who's not in our top 100, and he's not very good. And it's like, that's why he's not in the top 100.
Well, he does have some upside. Okay, there is some nice things about him. First off, good. he did go to Alabama, so that's a big plus. We like Alabama players. Sure.
Nick was making his case for James Cook, and Donnie's just like, yeah, Josh Jobe is not great. And it's like, all right, man.
Okay.
Welcome to the draft show.
Welcome to Boom or Bust. My name is Donovan. Josh, I hope you're not watching, because I actually do like you a good amount for like a later draft pick, especially. Can you stop?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Donnie. Go ahead.
There might have to be some editing for this one. We'll see.
All right, Josh Jobe. Alabama corner, and never produced at a high level, but I don't necessarily think he was bad either. I really don't think he was ever a bad college football player. I thought he was fine. Misses a lot of tackles, but does have good upside when it comes to man coverage ability. Not the greatest in zone, but also I'm a bigger fan of man coverage than zone coverage. I know the NFL is more leaning towards zone coverage, but there is a scenario where this guy does go to a team like the Steelers or the Ravens or the Cardinals, who are man-heavy teams that do run a ton of blitzes. And with some development, he could be good. I mean, he went to Alabama for a reason. He was a high 4-star recruit. I believe he was the #1 player out of out of Connecticut, which, it's not the biggest football state, but I mean, still, if you're the #1 in the state, you're obviously a good high school player. So there is upside with this guy. Though I don't think he's ever going to be a zone corner in the NFL. It's the last thing you want him to do. But if you can get this guy onto a team, on a blitz-heavy team with good coaching, you could find something decent as a maybe a decent CB2 for a team.
All right, so the guy I'm going to talk about is a guy who doesn't play in FBS football, and that is Troy Anderson from Montana State, the linebacker, number 125 on our big board, number 63 on my big board. I love this guy, and really what it boiled down to for me was he freaking murdered it at the Senior Bowl, dude. He was fantastic. He was the best linebacker, I think, in attendance at the Senior Bowl, which really is an event that is just not designed for linebackers. Like, you saw Devin Lloyd originally accept an invite to the Senior Bowl, and probably his agent got to him and said, hey, if you really want to be LB1 over Nakobe Dean, don't go to the Senior Bowl, because that event is really designed for you to fail. They put you in a lot of unfavorable situations in one-on-ones against running backs, and going and trying to blitz too against running backs. And a lot of times linebackers can't really boost their stock at the Senior Bowl. They only lower it at the Senior Bowl. Troy Anderson, though, played phenomenally in the Senior Bowl, at Senior Bowl week, to the point where I said, you know what, I got to turn on some Montana State film, man. And I watched some Montana State film as much as I possibly could find. And the tape backed it up too. This guy was killing it at an FCS level, obviously. And he was just an all-around really good football player. And, the fact that he killed it in the FCS level probably would have had him as like a day 3 player on my board, because you never know how that will translate. But he went to the Senior Bowl with all the other top players, and he murdered it and was the best linebacker in Mobile. So I think Troy Anderson is being a little bit slept on our big board and on a lot of other big boards as well. So let's go to the 100 to 76, and I'll read them off right now. Alec Pierce checking in at number 100, Tyler Algier at 99, Jake Ferguson 98, Charlie Kohler 97, Max Mitchell 96, Brian Asamoah 95, JoJo DeMann 94, 93, Darion Kendrick 92, Thayer Munford 91, Isaiah Spiller 90, Tyreek Smith 89, Fidarian Mathis 88, Sam Williams 87, Kellen Deesh 86, Channing Tindall 85, Jalen Petre 84, Marcus Jones 83, Jalen Tolbert 82, Josh Pascal 81, Kobe Bryant 80, Michael Wright 79, Dameon Pierce 78, Romeo Dubs 77, Kirby Joseph, and 76, Dylan Parham. I apologize for our YouTube viewers who are seeing the big board flash across and saying, why is he reading every name? This is for the audio people. People who listen to our podcast as well, they want to know who's in our big board. But Donnie, let's start with you on this one. What player in the 100 to 76 range do you want to talk about?
So I'm going to talk about a guy who got a good amount of hype towards the very, very beginning process of the draft season. I'm talking before the season started, and that's Charlie Kohler, the tight end from Iowa State. This guy was talked about as a potential maybe early second, maybe even late first-round pick at the beginning of the year. Everybody loved this guy. He was big. I mean, he's huge. I mean, his comp is Pat Freiermuth, so he's big. He's a good blocker. He's just your big, prototypical just tight end. But the issue with this guy, he's a fine athlete. I think he's a fine athlete. I thought if he would have been, like, when I turned on the tape, I was expecting a lot from this guy. And then I turned it on. And I don't want to say I was disappointed because the tape was good, but it's just, I don't think he's a tight end where I can just throw on a team and he'll succeed right away. So the issue with him is just he's not a freak athlete, but I think he can play in the slot. I think he can put him on the line and he can block. I think he has fantastic hands. He's an okay route runner, but he is going up against Big 12 opponents, which does matter. We currently have him We currently have him at number 97 on the big, or not 97, 98 on the big board. I have him at 78, so I'm a bit higher on him. I think he's I would take him in the early third round. I mean, you're not getting a high upside guy, but I think he could be a very, very, very good tight end 2 for you, and maybe potentially be a starting tight end down the line. But he's never going to be a superstar in the league, but he can be good.
All right, so I'm going to talk about Jalen Tolbert, the South Alabama wide receiver who checks in 83 on our board. Number 50 on mine, just cracks the top 50, a guy who I took in the second round of our mock draft earlier this week. There's a lot to like with this guy. First of all, he played really well in the Senior Bowl, but he's a possession catch master, and although he checked in a little shorter than we thought, he still played well against more physical with long corners with longer arms at the Senior Bowl. Guy with great body control, really good hands downfield, wins routes with physicality and good footwork. He's not particularly quick or fast, but that physicality and ability to win off the line of scrimmage. And I think getting the ball to him short, he's really good at turning upfield and using his size to get some yards. The one thing that I think separates him from most possession receivers, though, other than production, and I think the film against good teams, I think against Tennessee, you saw him play his best football, is that he actually has really good straight line speed for his size. He's going to check in around the 4.4s, we think, in the 40 time. There is a play against Tennessee where he catches a slant and he outruns the entire defense. And it's impressive because he is a pretty big receiver, even though he wasn't as big as we thought initially. This is a guy, to me, that looks like a way more polished Cam Sims coming in the NFL. I know that doesn't sound great to people who don't watch the Washington team, but Cam Sims is a big possession receiver with some straight line speed who has not played a whole lot for Washington. He's had flashes. He's had some big, flashy plays where he's made impressive catches. He's shown his speed on the field. This is a guy I think that can play outside, maybe a little bit in the slot too, and he can play for you 3 downs on every possession and be one of your starting receivers.
So the guy I'm going to talk about is number 90 on our big board, Tyreek Smith, the edge from Ohio State, and I have him at 44 on my big board. Another guy who murdered it at the Senior Bowl, was an excellent player at the Senior Bowl, and you turn on the Ohio State film, and I don't think it was as good as he was at the Senior Bowl, but it still was very, very impressive. He's a very, very good pass rusher at Ohio State. Now, where you get into some of the weaknesses is in the run game. He's not a terrific run defender. Doesn't make a lot of plays in the run game. But the money downs, on pass rushing downs, he was good. Really solid pass rusher at Ohio State. Goes to the Senior Bowl, is one of the best edge defenders at the Senior Bowl. And his week in Mobile, just like Troy Anderson, raised him a ton on my big board. So I think that Tyreek Smith is, again, being a little bit slept on a lot of people's big boards, and just because he proved it in Mobile that he can really hang with the best. But Nick, if you want to read from 75 to 51.
Yes, sir. All right. Starting at number 75, Nicholas Petit-Frere has dropped a little bit on our board. 74, Jamari Sawyer. 73, Christian Harris. 72, Sean Ryan. 71, Perion Winfrey. 70, Justin Ross, the Clemson receiver. 69, John Mechie. 68, Abraham Lucas. 67, Jalen Weidermeyer. 66, Chad Mumut. 65, Cam Thomas from San Diego State. 64, Khalil Shakir. 63, Brandon Smith. 62, the massive tackle from Australia, Daniel Faalele. 61, Leo Chenal. 60, Logan Hall. 59, Wandale Robinson. 58, Breece Hall. 57, Max's guy, Boya Mafe. 56, Isaiah Likely. 55, Carson Strong. 54, Kenneth Walker III. 53, Sky Moore. 52, everyone's favorite Jordan Davis. And finally, number 51, tight end Trey McBride.
So, Donnie, who do you like in that range?
So I'm way higher on this guy than they are. And I understand it because he's not very good. But the upside is ridiculous with this guy. It's ridiculous. Like, the upside with this guy is ridiculous. I'm talking about Brandon Smith, the linebacker from Penn State. I currently have him at number 37 on the board, and they both have him in, I think Nick has him like 75, and Max has him in the 80s, somewhere low 80s. I'm in love with this guy, man. I'm in love with this guy. Freak athlete with insane high potential. And I think, listen, those guys most of the time aren't worth first-round picks. Most of the time they're not, unless they have, like, a decent season. Because I don't think Brandon Smith ever had a good season. But this potential, I need to rephrase this. The potential of this guy is very, very good. And I think he possibly has the highest ceiling of any linebacker in this draft. And I don't think that's completely out of the question. It's just he never showed how good he could be at Penn State. He never did. Freak athlete who has all the tools but just needs to be developed by a coach who could develop this guy. Who am I looking at? I mean, I'm not too sure. I don't know if there's a coach who I would specifically say that I would just be like, yes, you can develop him, because I'm not too sure. But what I will say is I would take a shot on this guy in the second round because I think the upside is just way too good to pass on. Yes, it could fall flat and not work at all, but I'm willing to take the risk.
Pedigree too, 5-star recruit.
Pedigree, 5-star recruit.
There you go. The latest in the vein of the Penn State linebackers. All right, so I'm going to talk about the 52nd player on our board, a guy I have 46th overall and just happened to be higher on than the rest of us. Lucky me. Jordan Davis, the nose tackle from Georgia, who we've obviously heard a lot about over the years. He won Defensive Player of the Year in college football, which is, the whole thing that we may or may not agree with. Hint, we don't agree with.
He didn't deserve it.
Yeah. There are plenty of good players like Aiden Hutchinson, for example, who I don't even think qualified as a finalist. So that's good.
Nope, was not a finalist.
But anyways,
there's a lot.
Here's what you know about Jordan Davis, right? He's 6'6", 340. He is a physically very gifted nose tackle, and he's probably one of the best run stuffers naturally we've seen come out of college in a long time. I think the things we haven't really talked about is, although that he's not a dragster, he's a Hummer that can get up to 120, right? Like, he moves really well for a guy who's 340 pounds, and his get-off is incredible for his size. I think it's all about first contact for him. He's either going to bull rush you back or he's going to throw you to the side and get past you. He's not super refined as a pass rusher, but there are centers that are smaller. Honestly, I'd be interested if you were to go up against a Tyler Linderbaum that he can overwhelm with his size. We saw this at college level, that when guys are just not very big at the center position, it just was a mismatch because he's got 50 pounds on them. That's a lot. Very difficult to overcome that much of a weight difference when it's on the offensive line versus defensive line. He has incredible balance, again, for his size. This is not a guy that you see get knocked over that often, and it's not just because of his weight. You see him off kilter and regain his feet and be able to take up space where the run game is going, and stay upright in traffic and absorb ball carriers. He does get fatigued. You see him not play all three downs every set of downs, and that will be a thing at the next level. He's not going to be your 3-down defensive lineman. But I think in a league where you're seeing more rotational D-line teams drafting third edge rushers because you get fatigued, you want your guys to be 100% every snap. That's less of a concern for me than it used to be. And I think he has a unique skill set, and because of that, he's not like a joke prospect. Like, we're not joking about him. We're not throwing him like in the 4th round. Like, he is a good player. It's just the issue is the things he does well, being a really good run stuffer, is less valuable in the NFL today. It's more valuable than a running back, though, and it becomes more valuable when you're sitting back in coverage and need your guys up front to do that. And for that reason, I think it's safe to assume that it wouldn't be a terrible pick to take this guy in the top half of the 2nd round.
So I actually just changed what I was going to talk about. The guy who I want to talk about was actually second ever video at Boomer Bust. And it was breaking down. It was actually only PJ and I because Tate couldn't record it. We broke down the Justin Ross injury, which was a huge deal, massive deal back then. And he missed, as everyone knows, there was something that happened in his neck. They found a congenital disc, I believe, in his neck. He had to get that removed. His career was in jeopardy. He missed the entire 2020 season, and obviously came back to school this year. And he wasn't the dominant player that we saw in 2019. But that 2019 season was special. As a true freshman, you could make the argument that Clemson might have had the best quarterback in the country as a true freshman in Trevor Lawrence, and the best wide receiver in the country as a true freshman in Justin Ross. And where Justin Ross wins is this big, physical, contested catch guy who can still break a ton of tackles. He is 6'4", 205 pounds. And when you get the ball in his hands, he can break some tackles. And obviously with that 6'4" frame, he can go up and get it. So this is a guy who, a lot like Derek Stingley Jr., except way more severe, was excellent as a true freshman, missed all of his sophomore season, came back this year, wasn't the same player, but honestly, you can make an argument too that he played with DJ Uiagalelei. How much of it was Uiagalelei just struggling? How much of it was actually Justin Ross? So Justin Ross, I think, is a guy who you're going to want to give a lot of chances and see what he can do because of that special potential that he showed as a true freshman. I know it's year 4 now, and I know we're 3 years removed from that, but still, I think he's worth maybe a flyer in the 3rd round. And whatever team gets him could be getting a massive steal, but it's also a massive risk. A very boomer bust player, if you will.
Full credits. Full credits.
All right, Dottie, give me 50 to 26.
So at number 50, we have Drake Jackson. At number 49, we have Martin Emerson. At number 48, we have Trayvon Walker. At number 47, we have Zion Johnson. 46, George Pickens. 45, Daxton Hill. 44, Kingsley Enagbare. Pretty sure I pronounced that right. 43, Desmond Ridder. 42, Andrew Booth Jr. 41, Darian Kennard. 40, we have Arnold Ekitike. I'm not sure. Abichetti. I'm terrible at pronouncing names, so excuse me, everyone watching. At number 39, we have David Bell. At number 38, we have DeMarvin Leal. At number 37, Kyler Gordon. 36, Kenyon Green. 35, Trevor Penning. 34, Lewis Seen. 33, Bernard Raymond. 32, Myjie Sanders. 31, Travis Jones. 30, Nick Benito. 29, Jaquan Brisker. 28, we have Jahan Dotson. 27, we have Devontae Wyatt. And at 25, we have the quarterback from Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett.
Wow. All right, Nick, who do you got? Who do you want to talk about here?
Yeah, I haven't really had a chance to talk about this guy. We've obviously drafted him late first, early second. We've been, throwing his name around. David Bell, the receiver from Purdue. He's not quite on the Rondale, blaring sirens portion of my big board at this point. Although he's nearly as high because I had Rondale 24 last year on my board, and this year, Bell is 27 right now for me. He's 39th on our overall board. The difference being, of course, I think if Bell was in last year's draft, he probably would have been closer to like the 45 range. But Bell for me is like, I don't want to say poor man's because I don't think he's like that much worse, but I think he's a similar player to Rashad Bateman. He's not as physical, I think, and I don't think he's as fast or as good as an athlete overall. But I think in terms of, being above average as a possession player, route runner, and after the catch type guy, which I think after the catch is probably the worst part of his game, there is a little bit to show for everything for him in all facets of the game. I think the best part of his game is his body control and possession ability. That's something we say with a lot of receivers. There's a lot of guys this year that are like that. And normally you need something else along with that makes you a good receiver. And to me, he's a very, very technical route runner. I think he has enough athleticism to make it work at the next level. He's not a 4.3 guy, but he's probably going to be a low 4.4s, early 4.5s guy. And he's sudden with his feet and his hip movements. He's a guy who knows how to take space. He's patient with his routes, and he will be able to gain separation both short, intermediate, and deep. And when he gets open deep, his ball skills are top-notch, I think, in this class. This is a high-floor receiver prospect to me. He's a guy I would take in the first round towards the back end if I'm a team like the Packers or Chiefs. And I think he fits in that vein of a Rashad Bateman type where I have a hard time seeing him not produce year one, although I don't think maybe he's going to be elite right off the bat. There is a chance that he could hit a potential where he is a Pro Bowl type receiver.
So the guy I'm going to be talking about is one of the more it's a prospect who gets a ton of hype, especially on social media, and that is George Pickens, the wide receiver from Georgia. I currently have him number 52 on my board. Overall, he's at number 46. I mean, he's baby DK Metcalf. I mean, that's what he is. This is your big, physical wide receiver with loads of athleticism, and even has the same story of DK. Never produced that much at Georgia. He had a decent freshman year, but then it was loaded with injuries, and he was just never really the same player. But just like DK Metcalf, you are banking on that athleticism and just those tools that you just don't see often. Also, pedigree, former five-star recruit, which matters. Like I said before, being 5-star gets you drafted, but the combine is going to determine where this guy goes. Like, it really is. Like, are the medicals good? Is he as good of an athlete as he thinks he is? What's his weight? What's his height? I mean, the combine is he good in interviews? Like, the combine is going to tell us where this guy goes. Because I think he could potentially be a late first-round pick. And if he's good at the combine and he's healthy, I would take him there. I would, because teams mistake DK Metcalf. And I'm not saying he's as good as DK, because I think DK's physical tools and his athletic tools are a little bit better. But he's pretty close to him. And all those teams passed on DK Metcalf in 2019. Shout out to the Cardinals taking Andy Isabella over DK Metcalf. And DK Metcalf all the way to 64. And you look back on it now, and it's like, wow, what a steal for Seattle. So are the teams going to make the same mistake? Depends. It's just the combine, man. Like, we will see in March, will he be a second-round pick or maybe be a late day 3 pick? It just depends.
So the guy I want to talk about is Devontae Wyatt, who I was actually pretty surprised that he was going to be an early second-round prospect for us. We all had him in our top 32. I love Devontae Wyatt, man. It's a guy who I've been pounding the table for a while now. I think he is pretty comfortably. I know you guys like Travis Jones a lot, but I think Devontae Wyatt is the best D tackle in this draft. And you combine the excellent tape that he showed this year at Georgia, and I'm going to say this again, he was the best D tackle at Georgia. I know Jordan Davis won the Outland Trophy.
Close.
And the Bednarik Trophy. Devontae Wyatt was a better D tackle, and honestly, Jalen Carter, who we're going to talk about next year, and maybe even in our mock draft where we draft everyone who's eligible, he might be a guy who we talk about as well. He's a superstar. But Devontae Wyatt was excellent this year. Excellent pass rusher, one of the best in this class. Really good run defender, too. Really sound run defender. Obviously, he's not a Jordan Davis run defender, but he's also a way better pass rusher than Jordan Davis. And he's a freak athlete. 5th on Bruce Feldman's freaks list. I cannot wait to see him at the combine and what he does. He could put up some stupid numbers at the combine at 6'3", 315. And I'm going to mention this again. He was awesome at the Senior Bowl. He was the best D tackle by far at the Senior Bowl. Put up a monster week in Mobile, and for me, cemented his spot as the number 1 D tackle in the draft. And now, if he kills it at the combine, he can go from a late first-round prospect for us to maybe even a lot higher. Could have a huge rise on our big board. But let's get to the final top 25 that we got right now. At number 25, speaking of Senior Bowl, Jermaine Johnson, 24, Chris Olave, 23, Roger McCreary, 22, Jameson Williams, 21, Kyer Elam, 20, Malik Willis, 19, Treylon Burks, 18, David Ajabo, 17, Nakobe Dean, 16, Trent McDuffie, 15, Drake London, 14, Devin Lloyd, 13, Matt Corral, 12, George Karlaftis, 11, Sam Howell, 10, Charles Cross, 9, Ikem Ekwonu, 8, Ahmad Sauce Gardner, 7, Evan Neal, 6, Garrett Wilson, 5, Tyler Linderbaum, 4, Kayvon Thibodeau, 3, Derek Stingley Jr., 2, Kyle Hamilton, and number 1, Aiden Hutchinson. So, Nick, what storylines, doesn't be a player, but like what topic do you want to cover in this top 25?
Yeah, we've talked about all these players, so we're just going to mostly do takeaways. But I think the thing that'll stand out to most people is that Tyler Linderbaum's a number 5 player. But, I mean, what can you expect from a podcast with an Iowa fan and a Max Chadwick on it? So because of that, we're just gonna end up talking about 2, 3, and 4 here, which I think we kind of have this flip.
Let's go, Donnie.
We've got Hamilton, Stingley, Thibodeau, 2, 3, 4. And I think a lot of boards are going to have it go Thibodeau, Stingley, Hamilton, or Hamilton, Stingley. Part of that, I think, for us, at least, is really a hitting the peak in college thing. I think Kyle Hamilton and Derek Stingley each have had seasons where they alone have been like the best defensive player probably in the country in that given season, just from that position. Like the way they played is so high up on the board that in a class where there's like no quarterbacks, you could argue those guys were the best player in this draft, right? Now the thing with Kyle is like he's a safety, and so he's going to be a little lower on our board than most of the guys. But Derek Stingley comes out and has the season he had his freshman year this year, and he's probably the number 1 pick, and it's probably not very close, to be quite honest with you. It's an injuries thing, and it's and the timeline unfortunately kind of screwed him a little bit because, honest to God, like his season was 2 years ago. It really, you would think about it like his season. If we took the sum of a guy who was injured his first 2 years and had his Stingley season his senior year. It really isn't that much different, but we just think of it differently because of, what it's a recency bias thing, which to a degree does matter, but not maybe as much as we give to it. There are some concerns we've had with Thibodeau since right off the beginning. I mean, to be quite honest with you, this guy's a great athlete. We've always known he's a little bit raw. We needed to see him add a little bit of weight. He did, and he produced in college, but I think to a degree, I mean, he also got injured this year, and that didn't help. It's been flashy. There have been games where he's been great. There's been games where he hasn't done much, And because of that, for me, like this is a product coming out of college, coming out of Oregon, where you're in the Pac-12, you're not playing like excellent offensive tackles, where we haven't seen him at his best yet. And maybe the best isn't there. I mean, this is a guy who really is playing his best football already in college, and like he's a good edge rusher, but he's high floor player, and the ceiling we're looking for in terms of his athleticism, maybe he doesn't put it all together. I can tell you, looking at the film, I have seen Derek Stingley play as an elite corner, and it will translate to the NFL. I have seen Kyle Hamilton play as an elite safety, and it will translate to the NFL. I've seen an athletic edge rusher in Kayvon Thibodeau. I don't know that I've seen the elite, consistent edge rusher play from him yet, and because of that, we have it ordered that way. And I think too often another thing that happens is we've gotten, this is kind of a long-term thing, is we glorify the edge rusher position as like the second most valuable position in football. And I'm not saying this because I don't think the edge rusher position is important. It's extremely important. A dominant pass rush, as we saw with the Rams, can literally, I mean, I know they have other good players, but can be like the most important part to them winning a Super Bowl, in my opinion. It's a little bit overvalued. I mean, edge rushers are getting paid $30 million right now. Receivers that are good are getting paid 20. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. Outside of Aaron Donald, and the quarterbacks, a lot of the next best players in that game the other night were all receivers: Jamar Chase, Odell Beckham, Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins. Like that is where the league is going. It's throwing the ball. It's perimeter stuff, corners, safeties. Edge rushers can affect the game, but they aren't this. It's not this position that is so much more important than the corner position, as we've seen with other teams. And again, the Rams had Jalen Ramsey too. That's a big part of why their pass rush can do what they do.
Yeah.
So we have done a scouting report on this guy already, but I wasn't here for it, so I just kind of figured might as well give my thoughts since I wasn't around yet. Drake London, the wide receiver from USC, just big, physical, contested catcher. He's going to catch everything. Was on pace to have one of the greatest wide receiver seasons of all time with Keaton Slovis at quarterback, which is pretty impressive. But he is going up against Pac-12 opponents, so maybe the cornerbacks aren't that great, but it's not like they're bad. I mean, there's some decent cornerbacks in the Pac-12, and he was destroying all of them. I mean, this guy was on pace to having a better season than Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith, if not extremely close to them. And yeah, the separation concerns are there. He's not the best separator in this class, but I think he's just, it's kind of like, I know this is a bad example, but it's kind of like DeAndre Hopkins, where he may not be able to create the most separation ever, but he just catches everything. So it just doesn't matter. Like, that's how DeAndre Hopkins and guys like him and Mike Evans have succeeded. They may not have ever been able to create the most separation, but just because they catch everything doesn't really matter. And I think that's what you're looking at with Drake London. Also, for his size, unreal yak. Like, unreal yak for his size. I mean, when you watch this guy run after the catch, you just sit here and think that's stupid considering how tall he is. He's like 6'4", 6'5", and he looks like he's 6'1".
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I hate to end the video on like a sour note, but the guy at number 25 on our big board is Jermaine Johnson, the Florida State edge defender, who I am going to get absolutely freaking flamed for saying this. I have him as still a mid-second round prospect, and I know you're gonna say, Max, what on earth are you talking about?
Max, because what on earth are you talking about?
Max, what on earth are you talking about?
The entire video, I'm going to sound like the biggest hypocrite in the freaking world, because the entire video has been me saying, dude, look at what Devontae Wyatt did in Mobile. Dude, look at what Tyreek Smith did in Mobile. Dude, look what Boye Mafe, I mentioned in a previous video. Look what he did in Mobile. And Troy Anderson. I literally mentioned the Senior Bowl in every single one of my players.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're going to say, this is the guy who literally won the Senior Bowl. Like, if they're giving out an award, it's Jermaine Johnson. And yes, that raised his stock so much for me. But the difference is when I went back and watched the other guys who killed Mobile, and I talked about earlier, and I watched their tape, I came away and I was like, yep, that is the guy. That is what I saw in Mobile. That is him. Jermaine Johnson, I turn on his tape and I'm saying, I don't know where this came from, man. Like, he shows flashes, don't get me wrong. He's a very good run defender. But as a pass rusher, like, he just wasn't consistent enough for me. And I understand the week in Mobile was special. But I do believe there are other edge defenders in this class who had better weeks in Mobile. And I know I'm going to get a lot of hot flame for that as well. And I know this is just going to be a terrible, terrible take for a lot of people from me. But Jermaine Johnson, for me, raised his stock for sure for what he did in Mobile, but I'm not ready to call him a top 15, top 20 type prospect yet just because of the week in Mobile. I still think tape is so important. I'm anxious to see what he puts up in the combine, and that can raise him up even more, maybe into a late first round grade for me. But his tape was just so inconsistent for me that it's difficult for me to have him as high as you guys do. I've seen other guys have him top 10 overall on their boards. I think it just, in a special edge class like this, when there are so many guys who are freak athletes and have excellent careers and excellent seasons, for a guy like Jermaine Johnson.
Boye Mafe is not one of those guys, by the way.
Boye Mafe has had a good career. He's had a better carear, I will say, than Jermaine Johnson, and he's a freakier athlete. And I think yes, he is.
No, he's not.
He might be a freakier athlete. I agree with that, but it's for me. I
Boye Mafe doesn't know how to stop. I can stop the run better than Boye Mafe.
And Jermaine Johnson, he's a better pass rusher than Jermaine Johnson, which is more important. Jermaine Johnson is a great run defender. He's a better run defender, but I think
By a lot.
I know Boye Mafe, I think, was maybe better at the Senior Bowl. There's an argument to be had there. Had a better career, is a better pass rusher, freakier athlete, better prospect. But the Jermaine Johnson stuff, I have him as a second-round pick. I'm not hating on this guy, but I think the hype has gotten crazy for Jermaine Johnson. Now I'm just like, hey, I'm going to push back and maybe pump the brakes a little bit. There's a chance I could be completely wrong, and Jermaine Johnson we saw on Mobile is who he is. But I'm going to just say, 1 week of practice and a one all-star game, that's not enough for me to completely vault him from 70 on my big board to 12, like a lot of other people are doing. So I'm just pushing back a little bit. I know a lot of people are going to hate me for that. I just wanted to get my Jermaine Johnson discourse out there. But that's what we got for our top 150 big board. Of course, if you're listening to this and you didn't hear 150 to 101, please check out our Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at BoomerBustDraft. Please rate and review and leave 5 stars and subscribe as well. Follow all of us on our social media accounts as well. And leave comments below what you thought about the big board. If you hate any of our takes, I know my Jermaine Johnson take will probably get a lot of hate in the comment section. Let us know. We love interacting with you guys and what videos you want to see us do next. But for Nick Merriam and Donny Clemons, I'm Max Chadwick. Have a great night.